Well, hello and welcome to the Edgewood 4G podcast. My name is Kyle Parks, and I'm the discipleship pastor here. And I'm joined today with Chris Rogers, our youth pastor, and Micah Kongkousonh, our youth assistant, who's been with us for all of a month now.
I think 1 day less than a month.
He's rocked it out, though. Yeah. He's rocked it out, though.
Awesome. So we're here today, and we would love to have a conversation just amongst the three of us about youth and young adults ministry. So we lead these ministries here. I was youth pastor for 6 years until Chris took over a year and a half ago or so. And then Micah, like we said, just kind of came on. But maybe before we kind of get in this conversation, Micah, just share a little bit about yourself, just because people are trying to get to know you better and find out who you are and what you do, what you enjoy doing, those kinds of things. So,
well, if they know anything, they should let me know. My name is Micah. I can say my last name, but it won't be right. Kongkousonh. That's how I say it. That's how I'm gonna say it.
That's how I say it.
Yeah, I'm glad
that's how you
do.
say it.
When people say Kongkousonh, it annoys me. I don't know. I guess the K is supposed to sound like a G, but who knows, man.
Let's keep it.
It's not a real name.
In my mind, I'm trying to say it, and I can't.
I can't either.
Anyways.
Square one. Yeah, I've been working here for 1 day less than a month.
Okay.
And I've been enjoying it. I was here as a volunteer for 2 years now,
okay.
A little over 2 years, and then 2.5 years is when I first showed up here. 2.5 years and 3 weeks is when I officially came here, but we weren't meeting with Mainspring, and that was just a fun little story of trying to get a hold of
Well, we have to tell it because Micah was trying to get involved with Mainspringer Young Adults Ministry here, and we normally meet Sunday nights, but we didn't meet for like a few Sunday nights like in a row, or we're different places or something, and he kept showing up though. He kept coming, and praise God, you didn't like give up and just like, you know what? Forget these guys. I'm gonna go somewhere else. But you kept coming and got involved. You and your family joined, and now you're on staff. So it's just cool to see God's hand in all that. So, and you're also taking some classes, correct?
I am, yeah. I'm currently taking college writing and Old Testament survey, and then that'll be for the next 4 weeks. And then after that, I'll be moving on to the next 2.
All right, and that's through Moody?
Yep, Moody Online.
Awesome. Very good. All right, Chris, so I want to start with just some conversation about youth ministry. And we've been in this world for a long time. Chris, you've probably been involved with student ministry for 10 years or more than that, 12 years?
Yeah, it's got to be pushing like 12.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very
good.
Who's
counting?
Right?
Yeah.
Who's counting? Exactly. But you've been in this position now as a youth pastor for, I guess, a year and a half now. So is there anything since, coming on staff and kind of taking over this position here, is there anything that surprised you that kind of caught you off guard as far as, being on staff and then having this ministry like under you now at this time?
Right. I mean, so that's one thing that it's weighty, the idea of stepping into ministry, understanding what ministry is, and it's weighty. Mm-hmm. And so what you're just describing of having this ministry that's hanging under me, that it's tough on that. I think the first thing that I was surprised by was I walk in, first day of work, and I've got a standing desk, and my standing desk is as low as it can go with the preschool chair. Sitting at it, and I'm like, oh, we have pranks here. We're funny. I'm like, this is like the fire station without all the swearing. So this is...
So just a little hazing from our senior adults pastor, probably.
Oh, we're going to say that. Okay. Your name might have got thrown around as being the culprit on that.
I don't do those kinds of things.
I don't hold anything against you.
Just break chairs.
Oh, my word.
So... Yeah, man. It's anything that surprised me.
Especially like ministry in this day and age.
Yeah. I think for the most part, I've settled in pretty easy, and I think a lot of that comes from just the years, right? So you were the youth pastor for 6 years, and so even that whole time, you were pouring into me and mentoring me through it and giving me opportunities. And then even before you, the youth pastor before you was doing the same. And so, man, I just have had some good guys pouring into me.
Yeah.
And so I felt pretty confident stepping into it. But yeah, I think reaching this generation's tough. it's a balance. We talked about this a lot, you and I. It's this balance of the apologetics of knowing what you believe, this head understanding of it, but also how do we get that to transcend to their heart so they have a full, like, that's what they believe, right. Not just head knowledge. But then they're in a culture right now that's saying that everything you feel is what's true. And so, man, you're just wrestling through these components, and how do we really, bring that together where students begin to own their faith?
Right, and if we have them a couple hours a week, and teenagers on average are on their phones for 4 to 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
And then, perhaps some of them are in public school, engaging in social media and different outlets like that. I mean, they're going to get many more messages from the culture than they're going to get from, godly leaders in their lives. So that's why we do obviously push them to make their faith their own, to be in God's word, to be praying, to growing on their own through all of that. And we come alongside and try to help them, but also equip parents and encourage parents as well in that discipleship process. But yeah, they have to own it for themselves.
Yeah, the social media part that you just mentioned is huge. I had a student that they're like, well, hey, like, I think it's like this. And they begin to explain how they believe God works and how the universe was formed and all of this. And I'm like, where did you hear? Because like listening to it, I'm like, this is outlandish. Okay. Right? And I'm like, where did you hear this? And they're like, well, it's a TikTok that I saw. And I'm like, okay, right? But so social media is so influential. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, even like this with having a podcast, we've at least got a presence out there. And how do we take and increase our presence in that same world where we can speak truth, where there's a lot of clutter that's speaking, a lot of lies to our students.
Yeah, yeah. So what are you seeing, Micah, being on staff all of a month now? What kind of things have surprised you with
probably how ministry? Horrible his boss is.
Yeah.
But going from a volunteer to now on staff and being more involved in the whole process, the planning, the teaching, those kinds of things. What kind of things are you seeing as far as student ministry, and are there any surprises there, any things that were kind of new for you?
I don't think anything's new. I just am teaching now.
Yeah.
That's a great part of it. I get to study the Bible and then present that. And so that's exciting. That's always what we want in ministry. But if I was to just be a volunteer, I would still be fine with that.
Okay.
It's just been a learning process, and I feel like I'm just working here to learn, and that's what it's been for the past month.
Yeah.
I'm part of I think there's a new generation. I don't know it now, but our students, I think, are the same generation type.
I've heard of this, but I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah.
Is this Alpha?
Is that it? So it's Gen Z then Alpha?
Yeah, okay. I think so.
Yeah, but I'm Gen Z, and I think most of our students are Gen Z, and so I think I think I was the first part of that, and then they're the second half of it.
Yep.
Even then, there's been enough change. I don't know if it was... I never know if it's been generational or just how I was raised. Yeah. But I'm on my phone a bit, but I don't care about social media. And so for me, I feel like some old man not knowing how to relate to students sometimes. And so just those
Why did you point to him?
Because he's old.
Look at the abuse. This is what I'm talking about. I need union representation.
That's hard to say. But yeah, I just get to see how they react to different things.
Yeah.
I think that's the fun part each week, is seeing where they're at, what's going on, and then figuring out what to do from there. It's like puzzle solving.
Yeah.
I'm going to brag on Micah for just a second. When Micah and I first started talking about the potential of him taking this position as the youth assistant, he shared one thing. I was like, listen, man, I want to take and raise up leaders. I want to take and raise up people who are capable of replacing me, who are capable of replacing you in ministry. And I think that's part of what we're supposed to be doing as making disciples. And so I'm like, listen, like, this is what it would look like. You would be doing these things. And he was like, even if I don't get the position, will you still do that with me? Will you still take and teach me these things? And so it was just a cool, like a rabbit trail here. Just a cool opportunity, just like to see what his heart is for ministry. Yeah. And so, it's cool.
And I think that's great because we want to see that happen with a lot more students, young adults, guys, girls, both alike, just having them learn from leaders here.
Yeah.
And eventually, be in positions of leadership and eventually put us out of a job.
That's exactly
what we want to do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really what you want to do. So, but yeah, I think it's cool you're in a good spot too, Mike, because not only you're on staff, I'm part-time, but you're also able to take classes. So I'm sure you're just learning a ton right now. Mm-hmm. Not only you're learning the head knowledge, but also like you're getting to put it into practice by teaching and all. So my next question, and it could be for either of you, both of you, but you've seen.
Wait. Let's stop for a second because that was students. What about you? Like, what are you seeing?
Oh, okay.
Right. So Gen Z is like 11 to 26.
Okay.
I think is the age that we're looking at, and so it really is students just coming into student ministry, and then that's kind of peaking out right there with you for Mainspring. And so, like, what are some things you're seeing that are changing?
Yeah, definitely. So I have mostly Gen Z, but some of the millennial generation of which I'm a part. And, I often think about this ministry, and I've shared before, it's such an incredible ministry to be a part of, but it's also extremely difficult because, you're working with people who are, for the very first time in their life, they're gaining their independence, they're getting jobs, they're going to school, they're getting in relationships. Life is completely different than it had been for them when it was just them living at home with their parents or whatever.
The structure of it.
Yeah, it's all different, and they're trying to figure out what they believe. They're seeking to make their faith their own. So there's just lots of ups and downs in the life of college and 20-somethings. And so because of that, you see people fall off. You see people come in excited, and then all of a sudden where they go, and you might never hear from them again. Like, what was that all about?
Yeah.
But then you have others like Micah and some of our core that are just, they're there week in, week out. They're a part of community. They're close, they're tight, they check in with each other, they hang out outside of church. That's what I love to see. I love to see that, just the community. So, we just did a series on biblical community because that's just so important, going through the book of Acts and just, what are some things that we can do that, how they took care of each other in the book of Acts, how they sought after God with everything, and God's presence was there, and how they took care of each other, and they checked in on each other, and they were real, and it was authentic and raw. But I love to see that in the lives of young adults. I think that's what we want to see, real, authentic community. But it's hard at the same time because there's lots of other things vying for their attention and for their time. So there's some of those the things that are difficult with youth ministry or similar in young adults ministry. But now you have them, they are the ones that are deciding if I want to be a part of this. They're not being pushed by their parents to go to youth group or to Sunday school. It's now them making the decision for themselves. And so, we've always had a good core group. We've had many people come and meet their spouses and lifelong friends. And, I love to see that, getting involved with missions. I think one of the things that we've seen coming back from the Cross Conference, which is a missions conference for 18 to 25-year-olds, is just the excitement, the passion for God's work around the world.
Yeah.
And I think that is being pushed, that's being driven by our young adults at the church. And then also, just in general, anytime there's movements of God, revivals, most of the time it's youth and young adults involved with that.
I was just going to say that.
Asbury College.
Yep.
Just any of these Passion Conference, just any of those, there's young people. And so it's a hard stage of life, yet also it's a time when they're the most passionate and they're doing the most work and growth of their faith. And so I know I just shared a lot, but there's a lot of good stuff there to think about.
It's difficult, and I think you're hitting that point. In ministry, there's nights I walk out of here after our youth group, and I'm like, oh, that was awesome. And then like a couple of weeks ago, I'm sitting there, I'm teaching, and I was talking about God being sovereign, and I'm like, so what's it mean that God's sovereign? And I love God's sovereignty. It's something that I just take and I teach on so often.
Yeah.
And it's just like blank stares. And I'm like, no, like what is God's
This is
sovereignty?
really exciting.
Like, well, yeah. So I'm sitting there, we're going through Romans, and Paul's like excited about all of this. And so I'm getting excited, and they're just like staring at me. And finally there's a point I sat on the riser and I just laid back, and I was like, somebody just help me out here, And it's just like, you walk out of there sometimes and you're like, I thought we were going in a good direction, and there's an off night. But ministry gets hard because of that. You've got it can be a roller coaster when students are just passionate and chasing after God, and then all of a sudden, another.
And some nights you walk out and you're like, did anyone get anything out of
yes!
that? And you feel a little defeated. But then you might find out later on that, those nights where you're thinking, no one was with me, no one was engaging, and then later on it's like someone shares something. Hey, that really spoke to me. You're like, what? Like, where did that come from?
That proves the Spirit.
Right.
That proves the Holy
God's
Spirit.
Spirit's at work.
It's in my
not
weakness,
us.
man. He's strong, and so thank goodness.
That's so true. That's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the next thing I want to talk about, kind of off of that, is just kind of thinking about how, since you've been involved, Chris, with youth ministry for, 12 years, how have you seen it change from when you first started to now? I mean, we mentioned a few things, social media, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But what other things have you seen, noticed? What are the things that are difficult, but what are the things that are perhaps exciting now in youth ministry in this day and age?
Yeah. I think here's what I've, over the years, students need to be heard, right? And so I guess I run things a little looser oftentimes because I'm like, I just want to hear what's going on in your life. And even in our small group, back when you were the youth pastor, I had the juniors and senior high guys, and I would walk in, and I never really had any great idea of this is the direction I want to go, because if Micah was wrestling with whatever, like he would intrinsically just naturally bring those up in conversations. And so, man, it's really just stopping and listening to our students and what's going on in their life. They've got people telling them, from social media to parents to teachers to politics, everything is just coming at them, telling them what they are supposed to believe and what they're supposed to be doing, and to be a voice that you can just sit there and just listen. Yeah, is so big. And then, and from that, be able to point them back to truth, be able to point them back to Jesus, in so much of that. Just even, we were sharing, like, in my weakness, man, the Spirit, it proves the Spirit's working. It's in my weakness that He's seen as strong. And so even as students are struggling, to be able to be like, nah, man, like, God looks big in this picture.
Good. That's great. You got anything to add? I mean, I guess you have been involved with youth ministry. You were in the youth group 10 years ago type thing. So, I don't know how it's changed for you, and kind of seeing the difference of youth ministry then and now. But
what's the danger is that if you're a leader and you make it into what yours was, then it might not do anything for your current students. And so I came from a different youth group, and so I just hopped into this one once I got here. And so I wasn't trying to make it anything. I was trying to learn what works here. And so I've got junior high. I don't have the high school. So my small group is just made up of junior high guys. And we'll try to stay on topic, but some weeks they just want to talk about Minecraft. And again, they just need to be heard. I used to play Minecraft, and so we'll just...
Hey, that's a connecting point.
Yeah, sometimes that's what it takes, and then they get comfortable, and then the next week they're just on fire about a topic, and then the next week they are trying to play like rock, paper, scissors while one kid is talking about his heart struggles. And so it's something new every week, and it's exciting each week, and we're just laying foundations at this point, or we're not really doing it. They're having to choose what they are accepting into what they know. And so we're just, I feel like junior high is just there to listen to them and show them that they're part of the body of Christ, even at that age. And then the deeper questions happen, but more often they happen in high school, and they get into deeper thoughts then, and they experience more of life and have questions.
Yeah, yeah.
So right, and so you're trying to reach this vast maturity, age. They're in all places spiritually. So from your experience, how have you done that well? Right, and so you're going from someone over here who is unsaved that believes this is just a bunch of baloney, right, to the person over here who is a maturing believer in student ministry, or even with you in Mainspring. Like, how do you take and meet them all where they're at? How do you reach them all and help to encourage them all to move forward?
Yeah. You're asking me.
I'm asking. Oh, yeah, I'm going to ask you the tough questions now.
Okay, good. Well, I think
this was not on the script.
No,
even.
it wasn't. Well, I think realizing that everybody's in a different place, and meeting them exactly where they're at. I think that's just huge. And then listening, hearing them out, getting to know them. Relationships are huge for Gen Z. Everything is really done. The progress that you see, the growth that you see is done through authentic relationships. So I think just hearing people, listening to them, and then when opportunities come, like sharing that good news. But, in the midst of that, asking good questions, helping them to come to the conclusions themselves, and not just trying to feed them answers. I think that's what past generations have tried to do, which is said, this is the answer, and whether you like it or not, like, this is it. So you got to believe this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I think...
It's not the way they work, right?
Right, no. We really, nobody really works like that. But I think we just, in past generations, kind of accepted that.
Yeah.
But then we started losing students. We started losing young adults, leaving the church. And so I think people, leadership, were thinking through that, rethinking that. All right, what are we doing? What do we need to do here? So I think getting back into, like, apologetics, getting back into, like, authentic relationships, getting back to the basic truths of the gospel instead of just trying to make it all fun and games, right? And so I think that's something we've done from the very beginning, is we've focused on being in God's Word, you know? It's fun to eat pizza and drink Mountain Dew, but, like, if that's what you're structuring everything around as an event and activity, then you're going to lose them, right? And so, sharing the truth with them, even if they're really young, even if they might not understand, some of it's going over their head, but just doing that, eventually they'll catch on. They'll get that, and they'll take root in their heart. Obviously, they're going to make that decision to believe that or not, but we do our part by showing God's Word this is what we believe and why we believe it.
All right, I'm going to ask you another question off script here. So if right, we're going to take and just lump student ministry as a whole. We just got done discussing how they're individuals and meeting them where they're at. But if you looked at it as a whole, what is it that in student ministry that we could do to better help prepare students for the next step when they come to you, when all of a sudden now they have all this freedom? Is there anything that in ministry-wise that we could do to help prepare students a little bit more for that next step?
Well, I think in some ways you're already doing that. You've created the student leadership team, putting them in areas of leadership where they have to stand up. They have to kind of make those decisions. They're the ones that are planning events and activities and doing some teaching and doing mentoring of the younger students. So I think that's one way for it to be solidified, their faith to be solidified, is when they pass it on to somebody else.
Yeah.
Discipleship, we're all about that here. And, if we can find ways to implement our, college and 20-somethings and our seniors in high school, start mentoring, discipling the junior high kids, just go ahead and be doing that. I think that's a great way to do it.
Yeah.
Not only is it helping the younger kids, but it's helping them, because once they pass on that faith, that solidifies it for both of them, really. Yeah. And realizing that to own your faith is actually to pass it on to somebody else. It's not just so you can have more head knowledge. It's not just so you can know what you believe and why you believe it. It's so that you can give it to somebody else, to the next generation coming in. So I think just, calling to the higher standard, putting them in positions of leadership, and having them pass it on, I think is huge.
Yeah. I remember growing up, my folks intentionally placed certain people in my life that had influence with me. And I remember my dad, one time he's like, you need to be doing this, you need to be doing this. And I was like, whatever, I don't feel like doing that. And then all of a sudden my dad's buddy, who I thought was amazing at the time, he takes and ends up, just happens to come over, and he was like, hey, have you ever thought about doing this? Which is the exact same thing my dad had been telling me. And I'm like, bro, that's the best idea ever, right? And so it comes along with this idea of like, let's build people around that can hold some influence over our students, that are going to tell them the same truth that you would be telling them. And that's one thing I love about we've got so many of the Mainspring people that are serving in student ministry. And it's like, wait a second, they're the cool college guy, or she's the cool college girl. And they're telling the exact same truth that I'm saying, but they expect me to say what I say, right? In the position I'm in, and I got gray hair, and so they're expecting me. Hey, I still have some hair.
I said he was old.
The abuse. But yeah, so I think that's part of it, right?
Yeah.
We're bringing and surrounding the students with people that hold influence, but they're telling them the same truth too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good. So what else gets you guys excited, fired up about student ministry or young adults ministry? Like, what's happening right now that is really getting you guys excited?
What do you got, Micah? Throw you on the spot so I can think for a second.
He likes doing that to people.
I was about to do it to him.
Take it.
Yeah. It's exciting to see how involved they're trying to be. We got different events coming up, and even my guys who don't have many expectations placed on them are putting themselves in that position where they're excited to go. They're excited to help people. They want to go do what God has called them to do, and they know that truth. And so that's exciting because they're learning that on their own and applying it. And so they get to use that in small group. And so one student may completely know what one verse means, but then he doesn't know what something else is. And then another student comes in and he's like, that's what it means. And
that's great.
They help each other out. And so
I love seeing that happen when one of the other students can step in and share something, and we just get to sit back and watch.
Yeah.
You know? And as long as they're sharing what's true and it's scriptural or just true in general, then it's just like, just let it happen.
Well, even if they're not saying the truth, then you're there, and then you get to help them out with pointing them in the right direction.
Right. Yeah. No, that's great.
And so that's always exciting. When conversations happen, you can't help but get excited.
Good.
Yeah. No, I think student ministry is so much of planting seeds. And so whenever you can see, like, all of a sudden a student get it, and I'm not even just saying, like, get it of the gospel and been like, oh, I give God everything, get it, but just like these little moments. And so I started when new students come in to youth group, I always go up and the first question I have for them, I'm like, are you here because you want to be, or did you get forced? Right? And it just tears some walls down a little bit. But man, so many students are just authentic, and they're like, I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
Like, I got forced to be here. I'm like, hey man, I get it, but I'm glad you're here, right? Because you're going to hear the gospel tonight. Yeah. And so if it's just another seed planted. But I got a student that a couple weeks back, we started a new series on Sunday mornings it's the Holy Sexuality Project by Christopher Yuan, and he's talking about holy sexuality and how God intended sex for us. And so we're going through with our high school students on this series. And here's this guy that has been coming for several months, but is so disengaged, doesn't even sit with us part of the time, or he's sleeping or whatever. And we start this, and all of a sudden we start talking about culture's view of Christians. And this guy is up, and he's active, and he's intentional. Like, he's invested in this conversation now. And I'm just like, oh, like, this is awesome, right? Like, here's a guy who's finally starting to get it at some degree, like, something's going off that he's able to see, even if it's this negative connotation of how Christians are viewed in our culture, but like he's invested now in this conversation. And so whether it's that, or we had our retreat this last fall, we had a student, she was like, hey, I know now my next step in following God's will is baptism.
Yeah.
Right. And so these are huge steps for students to be taken. So whether it's just a small thing or a big one like baptism, salvation, man, that gets me fired up. Even just good conversation when they start arguing back and forth. They're like, is it premillennial or postmillennial? And they'll start these conversations, and it's one of those times, like you said, you just sit back and just let them go for it.
Yeah.
But they have to study. They have to have knowledge to be able to defend their side, and so it's pretty cool seeing students like getting it.
Yeah, I love to see. With youth and young adults owning their faith. I had a young adult come up to me this past weekend. It was just like, hey, I want to join the church. How do I do that?
That's awesome.
And it's like, I didn't ask them. It's like, just come to me. Maybe someone else was talking to them about it. But it's just an example of them owning their faith.
Yeah.
I want to be more invested here. I want to be more involved.
Yep.
All right, lastly, what are the ways you guys see God working specifically here at Edgewood with our students and our young adults?
Yeah. Man, it's good to see what's going on. That I don't measure the ability of a youth group based on numbers, but by numbers, it's more people that are hearing the gospel, more seeds that are being planted. The student ministry continues to grow. I've got new leaders that are coming in. It's interesting that God's sovereign, right?
Yeah.
Like, I've got one leader who's getting ready to step out because she's pregnant. She thinks that I need to take care of my baby. But I've already got other people. We love her. We've already got other people that are. We can edit that out, right?
No, keep that in. Yeah.
But we've already got other people that are calling up, and I just got a phone call today. Hey, like, I'm interested in serving in this area, and so just watching God being sovereign over it all, and it just comes down what you've laid such a good foundation is that this youth group, we have a good time, man, and we laugh and we have joy, but when it comes down to it, we're digging in. Like, it's so interesting. I'm teaching stuff that I learned in college, going through Bible college, and these students are just eating it up.
Yeah.
And this idea that our students are incapable of understanding theology just blows my mind. I'm like, you guys, they're just eating it up. They can do trigonometry. They can do theology.
Yeah, it was the same thing for me because a lot of the stuff that I heard in college and after that, even in grad school, I mean, all of that, it's like I hadn't heard any of that in youth group when I was growing up in high school. So now they're kind of learning it. They're getting started at a younger age. And I think it's important. Start having them think through some of those concepts and those deep theological issues that are important to our faith.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yep.
I love to see that, we're sending a lot of youth and young adults to mission trips this summer.
That was what I was going to bring
30
up.
of us total going to Belize, several more going to Mexico. So I just love that we're just, upping the temperature on the importance of missions. We don't just talk about it, we do it. And just creating more opportunities for them.
Even we're bridging the gap on generations because the mission trip you're talking about to Belize, we're taking a bunch of high school students, but we're also taking some men for a building project. And so we're crossing generations all over the place.
Yeah.
Man, it's cool to see, like, being the church. You talked about the Acts 2 church.
Yeah.
You know how they're living life together and sacrificing and spending time in prayer. And like, I think we've caught a vision of that here, and we're doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Mike, you got anything else, man?
Well, you mentioned earlier, maybe at the 28-minute mark, that baptism is like a big step for a student, but that's a big step for a Christian.
Yeah.
And so I think youth ministry is really fun in that way of that you see in ministry all the time, other ministries, older people who had a rough life and then came to Christ and then they're getting baptized. And then we'll have baptisms where there'll be some 80-year-old and a 10-year-old in the same body of water. And it's exciting to see that because they are walking with the same God and they get to start that without all that pain. I mean, they'll go through life and they'll fight battles and trials and hopefully they'll get through them, but they're choosing to start that earlier, and I think that's always encouraging to see.
Yeah, that's a good word.
Yeah, we're even talking in Romans tonight, that we're one body. And you talk about this 80-year-old being baptized at the same time that you've got a 10-year-old or being baptized. And it's like, man, like it just shows like one's the hand, one's the foot, man, but we're all part of the same body. Bringing, in Romans 13 is where we're hitting is like, and the purpose of it is to glorify God.
Mm. Speaking of baptism, we have the baptism service
shameless plug.
coming up the 24th and 25th. So if you're not baptized, if that's your next step, please contact us here at the church. We'd love to talk with you. And we already have 10 or 12 people that are going to be involved with that. And so that's coming up here soon. Well, thanks guys so much for joining us, being a part of this conversation today. And thanks for tuning in to the Edgewood 4G podcast. If you do us a favor, give us a rating and review. You can share this link, this video, and we think it's great when people can hear about what's going on in the youth ministry, young adults ministry here at Edgewood, because sometimes people don't always know what's happening in those ministries as they meet different nights. So, I'm just glad we're able to have this conversation. Please pray for these ministries. But again, thanks so much for joining us today.